Welcome to Daily Family Crimes. Today, we delve into a tragic story of love, obsession, and murder in the small town of Oakwood, Georgia. The following story is one of dark secrets, emotional turmoil, and a brutal murder that left an indelible mark on everyone involved. This is the case of a respected man whose life ended in a nightmarish way at the hands of an unexpected killer, leaving questions that would haunt the town forever. Robert Anderson, 49, was a well-known and respected figure in the small southern town of Oakwood. He owned Anderson's Hardware, a local hardware store that had been serving the community for over 2 decades. Known for his friendly service and wide selection of tools and supplies, Anderson's Hardware was the kind of place where neighbors could find what they needed, whether it was a simple screwdriver or advice on how to fix a leaky faucet. Robert was often seen behind the counter, greeting customers with a warm smile and chatting about various topics. Robert's life seemed ideal to those who knew him. He was married to Sandra Anderson, 48, his high school sweetheart, and the couple was often involved in local church activities and charity events. However, beneath this seemingly perfect exterior, Robert was hiding a dark secret. Despite his reputation as a devoted husband and exemplary citizen, he had started a secret relationship with Olivia Parker, an 18-year-old high school senior. Olivia, known for her striking looks and intelligence, was a regular customer at the hardware store. Over time, a friendship developed, which soon turned into a sexual relationship. Torn between guilt and desire, Robert struggled with his conscience. As the holiday season approached, he knew the relationship was wrong, but he couldn't free himself from the emotional entanglement that had developed. The relationship was fiery and extremely intense, with Robert torn between his guilt and his growing attachment to Olivia. In the days leading up to his death, Robert appeared distant and distracted, trying to maintain the facade of a loving husband while battling his inner turmoil. As Christmas approached in December 2019, Robert's behavior began to change. He spent less time at home and more time working late. Sandra noticed the change but attributed it to the stress of running the business during the busy holiday season. Friends and neighbors also noticed that Robert seemed worried, no longer as cheerful as before, but no one could have imagined the storm brewing beneath the surface. A storm that would soon shatter the peace of their small town. It was the morning of December 22, 2019, just days before Christmas. Oakwood was quiet, with most residents finishing their Christmas shopping or decorating their homes. Around 9 a.m., Sandra Anderson returned home after the Sunday service at First Baptist Church, where she had volunteered to help prepare for the Christmas Eve service. She noticed Robert's truck parked in the driveway, which seemed odd since he had mentioned needing to pick up some last-minute supplies for the store. When Sandra entered their home on Maple Street, the first thing she noticed was the fresh pine scent from the Christmas tree they had decorated together. The tree was still lit with colorful lights, and beneath it were carefully wrapped gifts, some with her name on them. But something was wrong. The house was eerily silent, and Robert did not respond when she called for him. Upon entering the living room, Sandra encountered a scene that would haunt her forever. Robert's lifeless body lay on the floor near the Christmas tree, surrounded by broken ornaments and tinsel. His head was soaked in blood, as if it were a mangled enchilada, and a hammer lay nearby, covered with what she could only assume was her husband's blood. Sandra fell to her knees, her body trembling as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. Panic overtook her, but she forced herself to stay calm long enough to call 911, her voice shaking as she explained the situation to the operator, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, my husband isn't breathing. There's blood everywhere," she cried. The operator tried to keep her calm.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Instructing her not to touch anything and to wait outside for the police and paramedics to arrive. Within minutes, the quiet street was filled with the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, murmuring among themselves and speculating about what had happened. Sandra sat on the front porch, dazed and in shock, unable to grasp how her life had changed in an instant. The Oakwood Police Department arrived on the scene minutes after Sandra's 911 call. Leading the investigation was Detective Elena Rivera, a veteran officer with over 15 years of experience. Known for her sharp intuition and methodical approach, Detective Rivera was respected by her colleagues and feared by criminals. As she stepped out of her unmarked car, she was immediately struck by the contrast between the festive decorations on the Andersons' house and the grim scene that awaited her inside. The living room was a disturbing mix of Christmas cheer and brutal violence. The Christmas lights flickered on the tree, reflecting off the broken ornaments scattered on the floor. Robert's body lay near the base of the tree, his head crushed, apparently by multiple blows with a hammer. Blood had splattered onto the nearby ornaments, soaking the wrapping paper and ribbons. Detective Rivera observed the scene, her mind working quickly as she began piecing together what might have happened. The hammer lying next to Robert's body was immediately collected as evidence. The crime scene was bloody but also oddly contained. There were no signs of a struggle beyond the immediate area around the tree. It was as if Robert had been completely caught off guard. The forensic team arrived shortly after, led by Dr. Marcus Chen, a meticulous and detail-oriented medical examiner known for his precise work. Dr. Chen began examining Robert's body, noting the severe head trauma, which likely caused an instant death. He estimated the time of death to be between 1 p.m. and midnight the previous night, based on the state of rigor mortis. Detective Rivera ordered her team to collect all possible evidence. They took fingerprints, photographs, and searched for any other clues that might point to the killer. They also interviewed Sandra Anderson, who was still in shock but managed to provide a basic timeline of her morning and Robert's activities the previous day. As the investigation progressed, Detective Rivera couldn't shake the feeling that this had been a crime of passion. The brutality of the attack suggested deep anger or jealousy, emotions that often fuel such violent outbursts. But who could have hated Robert Anderson so much to kill him in such a brutal way? That was the question Rivera was determined to answer. The first person Detective Elena Rivera decided to investigate was Olivia Parker, the 18-year-old high school senior who had also been Robert Anderson's secret lover. She was involved in several extracurricular activities, including the school drama club, where she had recently impressed audiences by playing Tiny Tim in a local production of A Christmas Carol. But beneath her polished exterior, Olivia was emotionally fragile, a trait that had become more evident in recent months. Olivia lived with her mother, Diane Parker, in a small but tidy house on the outskirts of town. The Parkers were known for being private, and Diane was known in the community for being controlling and obsessed with her daughter's appearance, especially after Olivia's father came out as gay and left the family. When Detective Rivera arrived at the Parker residence on the afternoon of December 22nd, she found Olivia still in her pajamas in her room, visibly affected by the news of Robert's death. The room was a typical teenage sanctuary, with posters of pop stars like Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande, but there were also signs of Olivia's obsession with Robert. Detective Rivera noticed a framed photo of Robert shirtless on Olivia's nightstand, and her diaries were filled with graphic entries about their sexual relationship. During the interview, Olivia initially cooperated but quickly became emotional when questioned about her relationship with Robert. She admitted to the affair, describing how they had grown close over the past year. Olivia revealed that she had fallen deeply in love with Robert and had even fantasized about a future together. However, as Christmas approached, Robert had distanced himself, and she feared he was planning to end the relationship. When Detective Rivera pressed Olivia about her whereabouts on the night of the murder, Olivia hesitated before claiming she had been home alone studying for her final exams. Her alibi was weak, and her emotional state raised red flags for Rivera. Olivia's tears and trembling hands indicated she was under immense stress, but it wasn't clear whether it was from guilt or grief. As the interview continued, Olivia's behavior shifted from grieving to defensive. She insisted she had nothing to do with Robert's death and began speaking erratically, blaming a mysterious man she called Frank for influencing her actions. Olivia claimed that Frank had convinced her to maintain a sexual relationship with Robert, or else he would torture her. But when Detective Rivera asked for more details, Olivia became evasive and confused. Detective Rivera wasn't convinced by Olivia's story. The combination of her emotional instability, her obsession with Robert, and her weak alibi made her a prime suspect. However, Rivera knew she needed more concrete evidence before making an arrest. The investigation into Olivia Parker was far from over, and Rivera was determined to uncover the truth behind Robert Anderson's tragic death. The second person on Detective Elena Rivera's list was Sandra Anderson, Robert's wife of 25 years. Sandra was a well-known figure in Oakwood.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Recognized for her deep involvement in the community and church activities. She was a warm and friendly woman, always greeting neighbors with a smile and often hosting gatherings at her home. Despite the outward appearance of a happy marriage, Detective Rivera knew that Sandra had harbored suspicions about Robert's fidelity for quite some time. Sandra had spent the days leading up to the murder preparing for Christmas. She was busy with church events, including the upcoming Christmas Eve service at First Baptist Church. To the outside world, it seemed like Sandra was focused on her faith and family, but inside, she was worried by a growing sense of unease. She had noticed Robert's increasing absences, which he often explained as work-related or part of his commitment to the church. However, Sandra couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When Detective Rivera interviewed Sandra on December 22nd, Sandra was still in shock from discovering her husband's body that morning. Sitting at the kitchen table, Sandra recounted her marriage to Robert, describing him as a loving husband but also admitting that they had grown distant and that their relationship had lost its intimacy in recent years, especially after their son Jason went off to college. She confessed that she had suspected Robert was having an affair after he repeatedly rejected her requests for intimacy, but she had no proof. Sandra's eyes filled with tears as she spoke about the strain this had put on their relationship, particularly in the last few months. Detective Rivera asked Sandra about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Sandra claimed that she had been at home preparing for the next day's church service. She had gone to bed early, assuming Robert would join her later, but when she woke up in the middle of the night and realized he wasn't there, she thought he had fallen asleep in the living room. It wasn't until the next morning that she discovered the horrifying truth. Sandra's account of the night was straightforward, but Detective Rivera couldn't ignore the possibility that Sandra's suspicions about Robert's infidelity might have driven her to commit murder. The brutality of the crime suggested a deeply personal motive, and as Robert's wife, Sandra had both the opportunity and a potential reason to kill him. However, Sandra's grief seemed genuine, and her cooperation with the investigation was unwavering. She answered all of Rivera's questions without hesitation and even provided access to Robert's personal belongings, including his phone and computer. Still, Rivera knew that emotions could be powerful motivators, and she wasn't ready to rule Sandra out as a suspect just yet. The investigation continued with Rivera keeping a close eye on every detail of Sandra's story. The third name on Detective Elena Rivera's list was Diane Parker, Olivia Parker's mother, a woman with a strong and controlling personality. Diane was known in Oakwood as a perfectionist, always concerned with appearances and maintaining a strictly orderly home, especially after her husband left her when he came out as gay. She was active in the community, often organizing events at the local church, but her primary concern was her daughter, Olivia. The relationship between Diane and Olivia had always been tense. Olivia, young, beautiful, and full of sexual potential, had been the object of Diane's obsessive fear. Diane's control over Olivia extended to every aspect of her life, from the clothes she wore to her social interactions. It was well known among neighbors that Diane had very high expectations for her daughter and was often harsh when those expectations were not met. There were even rumors that Diane disciplined Olivia severely, with one particularly disturbing story claiming that Diane would spank Olivia whenever she thought her daughter was attracting too much attention from the men in the community. Detective Rivera approached Diane on December 23rd, the day after Robert Anderson's body was found. Diane was at home, seemingly unperturbed by the previous day's events. She welcomed Rivera into her immaculate living room, decorated with traditional Christmas ornaments. including a perfectly adorned tree and a nativity scene. Diane was calm and composed as she spoke, but there was an underlying tension in her demeanor. Rivera began the interview by asking Diane about her relationship with Robert. Diane was quick to praise Robert, describing him in a distant manner as a good man and a pillar of the community. However, when the conversation shifted to Olivia, Diane's tone became more cautious. She admitted that she had been upset with Olivia's recent behavior, noting that her daughter had started wearing makeup and a bra in the weeks leading up to the murder. When Rivera pressed Diane on whether she knew about Olivia's sexual relationship with Robert, something she had been trying to avoid, Diane's composure faltered slightly. She denied knowing about the relationship but admitted that she had noticed Olivia had begun dressing like a prostitute. In her words, Diane claimed that she had tried to talk to Olivia about it, but her daughter had ignored her, insisting that everything was fine. Rivera couldn't ignore the possibility that Diane's jealousy and need for control might have driven her to commit the murder. Diane's intense need to control her daughter, combined with the potential scandal of Olivia's sexual relationship with a much older man, could have been her worst nightmare. This gave her a plausible motive. However, Diane remained cold and calm throughout the interview, showing little sign of guilt or remorse. She was polite and cooperative but offered little useful information. As Rivera left the Parker home, she knew she couldn't rule Diane out as a suspect. The investigation was becoming more complex, with each suspect revealing new layers of potential motives and secrets, but without concrete evidence, Rivera was still piecing together the puzzle. On December 24, 2019, just a day before Christmas, the investigation took a significant turn. It was a cold, gray morning in Oakwood, Georgia, with temperatures hovering around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Detective Elena Rivera and her team returned to the Anderson residence, meticulously re-examining every corner of the crime scene, determined to find any clues they might have missed. As the team combed through the house, an officer noticed something strange near the fireplace. Among the carefully wrapped Christmas gifts, he found a small torn piece of paper partially hidden under the rug. The paper appeared to be a handwritten note, but only a fragment was legible. It read, "Dirty boy, meet me at," followed by a time 1 p.m., and the initials OP. This discovery immediately caught Detective Rivera's attention.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The initials OP seemed to match those of Olivia Parker, Robert's secret lover. The time mentioned in the note also matched the estimated time of Robert's death. Rivera realized that this could be the key piece of evidence linking Olivia directly to the crime scene on the night of the murder. Rivera quickly ordered a forensic analysis of the note, hoping to determine if the handwriting matched Olivia's. The note was sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta for further analysis. Meanwhile, Rivera decided to return to Olivia's house to search for anything that could connect her to the note or the crime. At the Parker residence, Rivera and her team found a notebook in Olivia's bedroom, hidden under her mattress. The notebook was filled with disturbing entries about her obsession with Robert, including detailed descriptions of their sexual encounters and plans to secretly meet him. One of the entries, dated December 22nd, matched the time and place mentioned in the note found at the Anderson home. This new evidence was crucial. It not only placed Olivia at the crime scene, but also provided a motive driven by jealousy and obsession. Rivera felt the case beginning to take shape, with the pieces of the puzzle finally coming together. Back at the station, forensic analysis confirmed that the handwriting on the note matched Olivia's. This was the breakthrough Rivera had been waiting for. With this new evidence, the investigation quickly focused on Olivia Parker, making her the prime suspect in Robert Anderson's murder. With this new breakthrough, Rivera decided to interrogate Olivia again. During the second interrogation, Olivia attempted to change her story. She claimed that Frank, an imaginary secret lover, had been manipulating her for years and that he had forced her to kill Robert. According to her elaborate version, Frank was a high-ranking politician involved in sexual rituals and secret satanic and wicked practices. Olivia insisted that Frank had coerced her into living a life of sin and had eventually commanded her to murder Robert. The police, however, were not fooled by her story. Detective Elena Rivera, who had been leading the investigation, saw through the lies. Despite Olivia's attempts to shift the blame, the evidence was clear. The handwriting on the note found at the crime scene matched Olivia's, and her obsessive diary entries painted the picture of a young woman consumed by jealousy and rage. When confronted with the evidence, Olivia once again tried to alter her version of events. This time, she claimed that Frank was not a real person but a voice in her head, and that she was suffering from a mental illness. She said she was not in control of her actions on the night of the murder, but the police didn't believe her. They were convinced that Olivia was lying to cover up her crime. On December 26, 2019, Olivia Parker was officially arrested for the murder of Robert Anderson. She was taken into custody without incident, eerily calm as she was handcuffed and led away. The small town of Oakwood was left in shock, struggling to understand how a young woman with such a promising future could commit such a heinous act. Robert's family, devastated by the loss, found some comfort in knowing that the person responsible for his death was finally behind bars. However, the pain of his absence, especially during the holiday season, was something they would carry with them forever. Olivia Parker's trial began in early February 2020. The small town of Oakwood, Georgia, was captivated by the case, with many locals following every detail closely. The courtroom was packed as both the prosecution and the defense presented their cases. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Jonathan Harris, an experienced attorney known for his direct approach, argued that Olivia's crime had been premeditated. Harris, 52, described how Olivia's obsession with Robert Anderson had reached a dangerous level, driving her to commit a brutal murder when he tried to end their relationship. He emphasized the cold and calculated nature of the crime, pointing to the evidence that suggested Olivia had brought the hammer with the intention of using it. On the other hand, defense attorney Michelle Carter, 45, known for her sharp but compassionate legal mind, argued that Olivia had been mentally unstable at the time of the murder. Carter claimed that Olivia had suffered a psychotic breakdown, driven by the fear of losing Robert and the intense pressure of their secret relationship. She urged the jury to consider Olivia's difficult family life and the influence it had on her mental state. Carter painted a picture of a vulnerable young woman manipulated by an older man who ultimately crumbled under the pressure. Throughout the trial, Robert's family sat in the front row, their faces marked by grief. They listened in silence as the details of Robert's double life were exposed to the world. The pain of his betrayal was evident, but so was their deep sorrow for the loss. After several days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict on February 18, 2020. Olivia Parker was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The sentence sparked mixed reactions. Some thought it was too lenient given the brutality of the crime, while others believed it was a fair punishment considering Olivia's youth and mental disorder. Robert's family expressed relief that the trial was over, but they knew the scars of this tragedy would remain with them forever. After the trial concluded, life in Oakwood, Georgia, slowly began to return to normal, though the memory of the crime lingered. Robert Anderson's hardware store, once a community hub, closed its doors for good. Without Robert to run it, his family decided they couldn't carry on with the business. The closure marked the end of an era for the small town, leaving a void that would be hard to fill. Olivia Parker was transferred to a state prison where she began serving her 25-year sentence. Despite her attempts to feign mental illness during the trial, psychiatric evaluations in prison found no evidence of schizophrenia or any other condition that could explain her actions. Olivia spent her days in relative isolation with few visitors. Her once promising future was now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of a life behind bars. Sandra Anderson, Robert's widow, struggled to cope with the revelations about her husband's double life. Knowing that Robert had been unfaithful with an 18-year-old was a heavy burden to bear. Despite the support of her church community, Sandra withdrew from public life, choosing to grieve in private. She eventually sold the family home and moved to a nearby town, hoping to start anew, far from the memories that haunted her. Diane Parker, Olivia's mother, faced her own challenges after the trial. The scandal had brought shame to her family, and the tight grip she once held over her daughter's life had crumbled. Diane became a pariah in the community, and many blamed her for Olivia's downfall due to her controlling nature. Diane also withdrew from public life, avoiding the judgmental glances of her neighbors. For the residents of Oakwood, the events of December 2019 served as a painful reminder that even in a close-knit community, secrets can fester and lead to tragedy. That year's Christmas celebrations were more somber as the memory of Robert Anderson's murder cast a shadow over the festive season. It would take years for the community to heal, and even then, the story of Olivia Parker and Robert Anderson would be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in Oakwood's history. If you are interested in more real-life murder mysteries, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. What sentence would you have given? Leave me a comment and I'll read it. Enjoy life because there's only one. Yours truly, the detective.